Consummated on the 1st of March 2019, the PDS deal started off as an arrangement between Meralco and a host of other Ghanaian companies in tandem with the local content participation expected of that arrangement, that's some 51%. But a few months down the line, it was suspended and now it has been terminated. Sums up one of the biggest stories for the week, and what will be one of the biggest stories for the week we are going into. Hello and welcome to Press Conference right here on CCTV, where journalists, media practitioners gather around the table to dissect the major press engagements and press briefings in the course of the week under review. My name is Duke Mensah Opoku. In this edition, as I started with, we would look into the PDS arrangement, the PDS saga, one of the biggest stories for the year, for that matter, which seems to have come to a certain conclusion with the termination of the deal. We also look at the communication service tax and the tag that is actually going on, the tag of war that's going on between government on one hand and the telecommunications companies on another hand. Barely a week after that fiat was issued by the Ministry of Communications, the telcos are still deducting upfront the 9% communication service tax anytime you recharge or you load airtime. And finally, we look at the pathetic issue in the northern part of the country, precisely the Upper East region, where floods have claimed more than 20 lives. The show is live and interactive via the WhatsApp line 0550585832. You can join us via the WhatsApp line 0550585832. On Twitter, the hashtag is Press Conference. You can also join us via the Facebook stream. Drop your comments and we would read them. We'll take a break. When we come back, I'll introduce you to my guest. We'll delve into the issues. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is CCTV and the program is Press Conference. My name is Duke Mensah Opoku. Joining me in the studio to do the discussions tonight, to my immediate left is Richard Ni Anekwe Abe. He's editor of citybusinessnews.com. Welcome, Richard.
Thank you very much, Duke.
Next to him is Kwame Danswe Champong. He's also editor of an online portal, this time around starfm.com.gh. And to my far left is the editor of the Gold Street Business, Toma Emeye. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
So let's begin with a story that broke. Well, City News broke that story last night, having picked up from our sources, deep throat sources within the IMF delegation, government delegation that's currently at the annual meetings of the IMF, among others, that the PDS agreement, government had reached the conclusion that had been terminated. Well, there was a follow-up this morning when the government released a statement signed by the finance minister addressed to Mr. Sean Cross, who is Sean Shen Cross. Yes, that's the CEO of the Millennium Challenge Corporation. That's the body that's administering the Millennium Challenge Compact, which happens to cover this restructuring of our power sector under the Compact 2. Well, we have the statement. We're going to read excerpts of that statement for you, detail how government came to that conclusion, and what government intends to do now that that agreement has been suspended, even though the Ghana side and the US side at a point in time had some misunderstanding over exactly which decision or which way to go. But the Ghana side having stamped its feet on the ground saying that indeed they want this terminated. So we will roll for you in a minute the statement portions of it, which I would read for you here on the program before we start the discussions. So it's a 9-page statement. It's a 9-page statement, letter, I should say, which was written by the finance minister, addressed to Sean Ken Cross. Sean Ken Cross, who is CEO of the Millennium Challenge Compact. So the relevant portions, this sort of sums up the conclusion that government reached. It says, on the strength of all the information gathered about the purported demand guarantees provided by PDS as security for the transfer, the government of Ghana is of the firm opinion that there is no valid payment security. Our court has clearly denounced and repudiated the instrument and expressed a clear intention not to be bound by any present or future obligation arising out of same. It is quite apparent that the alleged signatory of the purported demand guarantees, Yahya Al-Nouri, was not duly authorized by our court to execute same, according to the company's delegation of authority instrument. The product was also not one of the company's product lines. It will be illusory for Ghana or any of the parties to the lease assign agreement and the box storage agreement or box supply agreement to consider that a valid and enforceable payment security was furnished by PDS in fulfillment of an essential condition precedent for the transfer to PDS. In direct response to an observation in the FTI final report about the possibility of Ghana prevailing in a lawsuit against our court, we say that the people of Ghana will consider it highly irresponsible on the part of government to act on the remote possibility that a Qatari court may find that there was a valid guarantee in the place where our court has unequivocally repudiated same as not its act. In any event, demand guarantees are governed by the laws of Ghana and not Qatar. Further, Qatar does not subscribe to common law for the doctrine of judicial precedents to be applicable. We'll look at the conclusion of the matter now, which says that government of Ghana acknowledges the challenges that the privatization of ECG has faced. However, this does not in any way diminish the government of Ghana's commitment to working with the Millennium Challenge Corporation on private sector participation in the energy sector. Government intends to see this process through in a manner that follows due process and protects the interests of all parties. So two things. Government has terminated the agreement. It has given itself and the Millennium Challenge Corporation a point up to the 31st of December this year to be able to conclude everything which has got to do. Now, the final tranche of this compact, a little over $300 million or something in that region, is on the line. That is, if we may lose that money if we're not able to tie up all the loose ends which has got to do with this agreement and other funding arrangements. So, many governments say this has been a very tight decision that they've had to take. But let me come to the studio now and begin with Toma to try and provide us an understanding of what this PDS agreement is all about, or this PDS arrangement, or this ECG privatization arrangement is, now that PDS is gone.
Well, basically, the question is, do you call it privatization? It was not actually privatization. Actually, it was a simple lease of assets, 3 billion worth of ECG assets to private people to manage in the hope that they will manage it better than the public sector has done. Okay. Now, the thing was that somewhere along the line, the agreement, which is part of a wider agreement with the United States government through the Millennium Challenge Corporation, part of the agreement was that since the concessionaires would be using ECG assets, Ghana had to be guaranteed that monies would be handed over to Ghana from the collections being made. So they now required, one of the conditions for entering this agreement was that there would be a guarantee, essentially a bank guarantee, which later became an insurance guarantee that these monies would be handed over as they were collected, a certain proportion of the monies. All right. Now, where the problem really just came, really the whole bottom line about this whole problem was that because the process was running behind time, government agreed that, okay, these guys have been unable to get the guarantee required. First of all, they were supposed to get a bank guarantee. They now can say they weren't able to get a bank guarantee. That's where the first red flag should have been waved. Yeah. So how could these guys not be able to raise a bank if they had the capacity to carry this deal through? Anyway, they now said they will provide a demand guarantee from an A-rated insurance company, which the IFC and the American legal firm, which were acting as transaction advisors, both agreed to.
Yes.
All right? Now, even that, there were delays. So the next big problem was that government now agreed that, okay, instead of insisting on receiving these guarantees before transferring the assets, let's transfer the assets and confirm those guarantees afterwards. Okay? So the assets were now transferred And it now turns out that the guarantee was false. I mean, we are talking about a massive fraud in this case, if what government is telling us is true. And apparently it is. I mean, from what you can see the statement,
yes,
it is.
But the point of conflict, at least within the last 1 month, has been whether we should go by the FTI report, which was commissioned by, I mean, the MCC, the MEDA, and you may say to an extent the U.S. government. And what government's own team that was set up by cabinet to also look at that. It looks like two different, whereas FTI did not point out to clear fraud, government's team seem to have gotten to that conclusion, and it's based on that is really convinced and is acting in that manner. In that manner.
These are two different routes that end at the same destination, and the destination is this. Our court says they did not give this thing. Two, they have pointed, and this is key, they have pointed out that they don't even have the network to carry this guarantee. So whether you want to argue about how the thing came about, you have a situation where you've accepted a demand guarantee from a company that does not have the financial capacity to back it up if called upon. So we can now look at who has done what and this and that, but the bottom line is that we do not have an effective demand guarantee in place, which means that if PDS takes off with the collections, there's nobody who will reimburse us. And that is the bottom line. There's going to be a lot of talk about who did what and how it came about and everything, but the bottom line is that without that demand guarantee, an effective demand guarantee in place, it will be very, 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 very dangerous to go ahead.
At the risk of not going into what may be subject of litigation, is this a classical case of fraud? Has the country been defrauded?
Well, you see, there are a lot of questions still unanswered. For one, what has happened to the collections made so far? Where are they? How much? That was going to come to this issue of what among the lessons we should have learned. Especially
when the FTI report stated that as part of you raising the money for the insurance, one of the partners paid just $1 million, and the rest of the money was raised through the collection of revenue, more or less our electricity bills to raise the rest of the money.
Personally, as you said, at the risk of litigation, this is why I said at the beginning that it seems to be very huge fraud. I mean, because look, no matter how you look at it, no matter who you blame, when you have a situation where you come and present a document and says that this company has given you a guarantee for $350 million US, and the company now says it's not true, it never happened. We don't even have neither the financial capacity nor the legal or internal constitutional ability capacity to give such a thing. Then there must be fraud. There must be fraud. I mean, the documents were fraud. There's no way you can get around it. All right? But for me, I think it was just the culmination of a lot of untidy things that happened throughout this entire process. And I beg, quickly, I must add this. What scares me now is that after all this process we have gone to, see how untidy the process eventually has turned out to be. And now government is talking about speeding up a replacement for PDS between now and December using restricted tender and this and that and that. I think that, I mean, when you try to rush something, try to move something through at a certain pace and you don't get it right, and you have to go back to square one, I don't think the solution will be to make them try and do it even faster the next time around. It might actually be worse. And that thing really worries me. Look, we're talking about $3 billion US worth of state assets here. I don't think that we should be tied to a 2-month timeline to have this over when we've gone through a process that's taken years and we still got it wrong.
Okay, let me come to Richard now. Richard, well, is this the end? Should it end here?
For me, I think that to start with, the process that gave birth to PDS or the Miracle, whatever concession, I mean, was flawed from the beginning. And
this is
look,
IFC as transaction advisors, Hampton and the US law firm.
Look at what we are seeing now.
We know how the Americans are keen when it comes to the use of their taxpayers' money.
I think that it all betrays, I mean, the thoroughness of the process, because look at what we are seeing now. And for me, what is instructive is, I mean, when we read the letter by the minister, it talked about ECG being the ones that discovered this particular breach. And for me, I'm looking at the transaction advisor. So somebody presents demand guarantee 2 days to the transfer date. What sort of due diligence went into it? Because we are talking about 3 billion worth of assets, and someone presented the guarantee, demand guarantees, or for want of a better word, the insurance that underpins all this particular transaction 2 days to the transfer date, and we didn't do any due diligence. You know, you read the letter again. It talked about they wrote to Alkut, and they didn't get a response, but because they didn't want to let the whole process hang, they had to continue in hoping that a response from Alkut will come. And I'm thinking, look, this is our national asset we are talking about. And if this is a condition precedent, there's a need for you to make sure you cross-check and dot all your I's and cross all your T's. You don't do things in hope. So what could have happened? Imagine that between the period after the handing over to PDS and the time that the response from Alkut came, something had happened to our national asset. We would have lost all these for nothing, because it's when we go to Alkut that they're going to tell us that, look, this particular guarantee was null and void. And for me, where I agree with Thomas that this is fraud is, you read from the letter once again, it talked about the fact that there was a particular point the Qatari guy said, the person who signed the letter, who gave the initial confirmation, there were two confirmations actually. There was the first confirmation, then the second one said, no, we don't know anything about it. Saying that the person to have confirmed that the deal was actually, or the guarantee was actually appropriate or valid, was not authorized to do that. And that person forged a signature.
Was not authorized to sign above a certain threshold.
$15,000. So it means that,
and this is $50 million deal.
So it means that that person may have done that thing under a particular direction.
And that person is actually on suspension.
Exactly my
the
point.
person who did that.
And it's even more curious to know that instead of the $12 million guarantee being paid at once or whatever arrangement, it was paid, $1 million was paid. So you could be asking yourself, so under what condition did this particular guy sign all these documents? And where did he even come from in the first place? I mean, who did he come to contact with? And you read the report from the FTI. You could tell that they came in with a mission to kind of exonerate their people involved in this particular transaction. And exonerate here doesn't mean that they were complicit. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that there were certain things they should have done as transaction advisors. Because, I mean, some of these things, you are advising the transaction. So you should be able to do some of the due diligence and all.
No means an entity, but the IFC of the World Bank Group.
I mean, it's curious that,
with such huge credibility.
And this was, for want of a better word, very basic. Somebody submits, I mean, not basic like easy as one ABCD, but I mean, it's something that, I mean, when you are doing some of these transactions, you know, you have to do. Because this is a condition precedent. It means that it has to come in place before the contract will become valid. So if you don't cross-check these things, it means that there are petty other conditions which are not condition precedent that probably we may have overlooked. Do you get it? Because this was a whole deliberate, complex scheme of things. And for me, I would give, I mean, kudos to the ECG guys for the work they've done for bringing this to our attention. Because if they hadn't done that and something untoward had happened, I mean, the whole country will be naked.
I'll come to you, Kwame.
Well, you see, the truth is this. There are so many jargons involved in these PDS things that if you're not careful, you'll be confused. At one point, they are talking of SPV, they are talking of PSP and all that.
Condition precedent,
exactly, and it makes it difficult for the average person to really appreciate this conversation. But the truth is this. It's really simple. The American government says, in order to help you efficiently manage the operations of power, we are supporting you with $492-point-something million. You just provide about $37 million, and let's help you do that. Now, in order for you to do that efficiently, we believe that we should get a private person to help manage the asset of ECG. Now, that private person, there was a competitive tender. Then, Miracle, Philippines company, wins the tender. And then we say that there's a need for a local component aspect of the whole program. So let's form an SPV, special purpose vehicle, that will ensure that Ghanaians also get involved. So PDS comes to play. Now, PDS, Miracle Company itself has just 30%.
That was to be 20%.
Exactly.
But then this government came and
we changed it. It became 51% for PDS for the Ghanaian component. Then Miracle has 30% and then Angolan firm has, I think, 19%.
How did that Angolan firm come in with 19%?
I don't know.
No, it was an arrangement.
I don't know.
It was an arrangement by Miracle.
Yeah.
So I mean, even from what we learned last Friday, Miracle itself created Meridian Power Services in Hong Kong to take over that 30%. Which should have raised some bells should have been told at that point in time.
The point I'm driving at is that it's a very basic thing that has happened. That when people begin to use very technical words, it prevents the average person from appreciating the enormity of the fraud that has happened. Now, we had the red flag started from February 27. Now, this process had begun for some time now. It was just 2 days to the takeover, to the transfer of asset of ECG to PDS. Then they came back and said they were not able to obtain the bank guarantee. And so they should waive it for them to present demand guarantee. Now, they brought the demand guarantee. And then the IFC and Hunton & Williams, the American law firm, agreed that they should just present that and let it go. First one, they were not able to meet the bank guarantee. That was agreed for them to take over. Then they took over. 27, ECG was not impressed by the fact that they were not able to submit that. But when they allowed them to present the demand guarantee, ECG did a background check, wrote to Akut, because the demand guarantee was from Akut and Reinsurance. They came together to form, the insurance for them. ECG wrote to them on 28th. There was no response. And then 1st March came. The transfer took over. While the transfer was occurring, ECG was still not impressed. Because the response, the letter they wrote to Akut, there was no response. Then on 13th March, just less than 2 weeks to the transfer, MIDA presented a letter to ECG. That letter was purportedly coming from Akut, saying that the demand guarantee was genuine and that everything was okay. So I want to ask, what was the role of MIDA in that whole process? Because MIDA was the one that drew ECG's attention that the letter, the insurance was okay. Then on 24th, ECG was still not impressed. They asked MIDA to go back and find out from Akut what exactly the details of the things they are bringing are. Then on 24th, the biggest letter came from Akut that this whole thing has been fraud. It doesn't exist.
Wait, are you talking about the same? Are you talking about the same MIDA that allegedly misrepresented PURC a couple of years ago?
It's the same MIDA that told ECG. So I'm asking myself, my brother, between the time ECG was writing those mails to Akut and there was no response, what prevented us as a state in the first place from transferring 2-3 billion of our assets to these people without going to the headquarters of Akut to find that first? Even before we transfer.
Yes. It should have it was made a condition precedent for a purpose. There was a reason why it was
there were 40 condition precedent. Only 5 of them were critical. So just that. What prevented us from going there to verify?
Because that's what the whole deal was based on.
Exactly.
Another question is inside the whole statement. There's no refer to a certain company. Who brought Akut into the deal in the first place? Joe Australia. There's no mention about that inside this statement.
I'm driving out there now.
The guys who apparently brought the people from which the fraud has arisen. Joe Australia is not even mentioned.
At this point in time, we'll continue to use the word alleged fraud.
So this is where we go to now. When the 24th letter came, and Akut said, by our constitutional mandate, we are not allowed to do this. We do not have the financial muscle to do this and all that. Then the awareness or alertness began that, okay, so all along the chain, we have been defrauded. Now, ask yourself, within that 13th, when they wrote a letter to MIDA, and MIDA presented the letter to ECG, who were there at that position protecting the interest of Ghana as a state? Because come to the basis of it, it's Ghana's asset.
Yes.
Every other person was just helping us to manage it well.
Efficient.
The essence of this whole arrangement is for efficient management and operation and investment. So if anybody was coming to invest in your project, you want to know if the person has the financial muscle. So 24th letter comes. Our court says we are not allowed to do this. At best, they are punishing the person who took this whole deal. And so we are not supposed to run this. So between that time, when the transfer are taking place and all that, the monies who we were actually paying people, allowing people to manage our assets when those people had nothing.
No, paying them to amass money, go and pay back there
Exactly.
so that they can own
They
it.
had nothing.
Wow.
They are nothing. That's what has been happening. They claim that they were going to, they are investing. The purpose for which they were supposed to take over was to invest and operate and ensure efficient management. That company itself had problems. The one who was supposed to give them, you see, like I said, often we use guarantee, demand and all that, and it creates problem for everybody to appreciate.
Duke, could it be that the fact the reason they were not getting the bank guarantee was because they didn't have the money? Because clearly,
That's the bottom line. Because if you can't raise if you can't raise letters of credit, obviously you have raised questions about your financial muscle.
When they issue about the unavailability of a bank credit, bank guarantee, we're made to believe that it was kind of difficult getting it. But now, from what we are getting,
it is clear that
it was clear they didn't have the money and they opted for the insurance guarantee. And that should have been the biggest red flag because if you couldn't even raise money for a guarantee, how then do we give you our assets?
Where there is fraud, and nobody can argue that point out, is that, look, PDS has majority Ghanaian shareholding. Majority Ghanaian shareholding. So it's not some foreign firm that just came to town and is trying to bulldoze their way through. Majority Ghanaian holding. So those Ghanaians who connived with our court to get that wrong letter, who does not exist, where are they? Who supervised the deal?
And related to that, you see, I think one lesson we should learn in the future is this. It will be very interesting to find out the conditions under which this whole deal was done, on the basis that PDS was supposed to bring in $500 million US. Now, Ghana insists on 51% local participation. All right. I would like to know, those Ghanaian shareholders, did they have the money to bring 51% to that 500 million? Because if not, which I suspect is the actual situation, would you be surprised that you could not get a genuine company who is willing to go and raise 500 million in private investment in order to own 49% of a company, for which 51%, the other 51% is just going to locals in order to fulfill local content regulations, but they don't have money. So, of course, if you pay peanuts, you end up with monkeys.
Yeah. You see, it's even more serious is the funny claim people make that at this point, let's accept that all these things are allegations and the truth will come to fore. It cannot hold that way because this is our government that set up an investigative body, went to our court headquarters, and they confirmed that this does not exist. So that element of allegation does not exist.
It's fraud.
It's
simple.
Fraud.
Yeah, there are still allegations until proven otherwise. Just to be on the safer side, here we say there are still allegations.
I agree because court has not,
until proven otherwise. But just a little point, a brief, just
okay, go ahead.
We'll take a break here. This is press conference right here on CCTV. We are trying as much as possible to make sense of the PDS deal. Welcome back. This is press conference right here on CCTV. Before we went to the break, we were discussing the termination of the PDS deal, that deal that brought in power distribution services to manage the distribution of power in the country. That deal has just been terminated by government by a letter that we've seen written by the finance minister to the CEO of the Millennium Challenge Corporation. Final thoughts on this matter. There is the leg of finding the company that will replace PDS. The government has said it's trying to meet a deadline of 31st December this year with restrictive tendering. There's also a strong argument being made for people to be prosecuted. Those who and whose oversight all of this happened. Closing thoughts, a minute, then we'll move to our next issue.
Well, first of all, for the replacement, as I've said before, I don't think we should tie ourselves to a 2-month thing at all.
Okay.
Because it is a recipe for disaster.
The money we want to access is time bound.
Yeah, so let us discuss with the U.S. government about extending the thing. Because I'm sure the U.S. government, at the end there's U.S. taxpayers' money that's going into this compact. The U.S. government wants the thing to go haywire. And I bet there's another thing I want to use this opportunity to talk about. During this transition back from PDS to ECG, I hope that customers will not suffer. Because me, as I'm sitting here, ECG has given me a bill. They say I'm owing them 5,000 Ghana cedis, which is equivalent to my 4 years light bill. Just because they changed my meter to prepaid meter on Thursday. On Friday, I wanted to buy units. They said, unless I pay 5,000, they won't sell units for me. As I'm here, this throughout this week, I have not been able to put on my fridge. So my light will last till Monday. They said they are going to look into the matter.
5,000?
5,000. This is 4 years, my 4 years rent. They said that's what I'm owing them. Meanwhile, the last bill they gave me, they were owing me. How it has suddenly changed. I mean, it's just blackmail. For this morning, I was now with my former partner when I was running Business Week, and I decided he went through exactly the same thing. And guess what? Not just the same thing, the same amount. The actual amount is 5,200 Ghana cedis. Oscar Ugo, the publisher of Corporate Guardian, said he went through the same thing. Was it last year or so? And it was the same amount. When they changed from postpaid to prepaid, and he now goes to buy units, and they say he's owing 5,200 Ghana cedis. The same. I don't know whether it's coincidence or the same amount of money.
Well, Kwame.
So what I'm saying, it's not my personal, but what I'm trying to say is that I hope those people who are in this kind of situation are not going to suffer from the current confusion over what is going on between ECG and PDS. Because believe me, there are a lot of problems. If you go to ECG, you see the number of people with major complaints. And this thing is not going to help them.
Okay, so look, we had 5 years to do this. We signed it in 2014. It's expiring 31st December this year. We have $190 million more to access. And as we speak, we stand to lose that money. Yeah. Out of that 5 years, look at the mess we have made with ourselves and the process. Now we are saying that give us 2 months to get it right. Commonsensically, I do not see how 4 or 5 years of a time was wasted, yet you expect somebody to believe and trust that this whole mess will go away, everything will be cleansed up within 2 months. That makes sense to me.
Richard?
Well, for me, I think that we are our own enemies. And you look at the money that the Americans are bringing. I mean, with all due respect, yes, it's a huge money. But if we are to be truthful with ourselves and manage ECG very well, I mean, the money they're bringing, it could be pocket change or chicken change. And look, for me, like he's saying, like my colleague was saying, 5 years to do this, we couldn't get it right. What shows that we are going to get it right in 2 months? And are we going to get it right because we want to assess the rest of the funds or what? Are we doing this for ourselves or we are doing it because there's some free money somewhere, let's do it and go and take it? Look, for me, I think if that's our mentality, we are not going to get this right. Let's do this because we want to help Ghanaians. Let's do this because we want to make the ECG efficient. Without that, if you are going to think about assessing the MCC funds, then I think we've lost it from the beginning.
Okay. These are what my panelists think. This is what you also think. Prince Henry from Koforidua says, even though we are told the PDS deal has been cancelled, we expect the president to speak to Ghanaians on the report and the way forward. And we also want government to prosecute those who perpetrated the so-called fraud on the country. As for those who have lost their lives in the northern parts of the country, that's a story on the flats we'll be coming to. May their souls rest in peace, and I urge government to be more proactive than reactive in handling such issues. Walanyo in Akwetia says, finally, PDS on its way out of Ghana, but is that the end of it, or prosecution will take its course against the signatories? That's also a question that we're looking for answers to. For now, though, we'll move away from PDS to the communication service tax. Last week, we discussed it on the program because there was a directive from the Communications Ministry to the Telcos, first to NCA, then to the Telcos, to stop the upfront deduction of the 3% increase, which is made 9% in all for the communication service tax. Well, the minister addressed a press briefing, Meet the Press series, at the Information Ministry last Monday. This is what she had to say.
Whatever they may have lost in absorbing the 6% CST, they more than made up for it by refusing to roll over credit that had been paid for by consumers but remained unused on the expiration of the bundle period. They are now effectively robbing consumers by passing on the full tax while retaining the unused data and voice bundles. Upon also countenance no excuses for poor service quality and encourage all customers to report any issues of poor service, quality of service, or substandard user experience to the regulator for remedial action. We will work with the operators to resolve any issues they may have, but will expect the same cooperation from them in complying with their license conditions.
So, Mensah Opoku, interestingly celebrating a birthday today, but that's the Communications Minister, MP for Abekuma West. The Telcos seems to be calling the bluff of government in this respect. Well, 7 days, almost 7 days, there's been no change. You buy airtime, I bought airtime last night, the deduction took effect.
Well, I don't think they are calling the bluff of the government.
Really, because the letter to the NCA was quite,
no, exactly.
in your face.
And that is a problem. That is a problem. The letter to NCA. Do you get it? The letter was coming from government or the Ministry of Communications to NCA and not to the telcos. Do you get it? So, I mean, when you appreciate some of these things, you will understand that they were telling the NCA to act.
So the NCA was being lax.
We may not know the discussions NCA may have had with the telcos. What we are privy to is what came from the Ministry of Communication to the NCA. So we need to know what the NCA has been telling the telcos. But from what I know there's been a series of meetings that the telcos have met Ministry of Finance and I think GRA, because I mean when it comes to some of these tax policies and measures, that's how the communication or the administration process should be. And for me, I think that this whole thing is disappointing because we could have gotten it right. Why am I saying this? When it comes to some of these things, taxation and all that, yes, I mean, as a government, you have every right to pass whatever tax that you want, but there should be some sort of consultation. And consultation because if we had done that, we would have known the methodology the telcos would have used to levy this particular tax. But because we didn't do it, we were of the assumption, and I'm saying we in place of government, they were thinking that the telcos would handle it the same way they were handling the 6%. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking that, look, I mean, that's somebody's imagination. And if it were to be so, the telcos would have done what they were doing. But they didn't do it. They also came up with their own way of deducting. Yes, they operate within certain guidelines and certain laws, so they have to comply all that. But I think that we should have at least engaged the telcos. And when the communications minister was asked whether there was a consultation, and I think I was disappointed in her response, saying that the media budget where the increment was announced served as sufficient notice. I think that is disappointing. Look,
but before that, you see the telcos sent messages. Is that to say that the regulators did not see those messages that they were? No, but they were sending around that this is how they were going to apply. What they just didn't understand.
So that's what I'm saying, that government was
working. We have a regulator in that sector.
So government was working with the assumption, thinking that they would have handled the same way they were handling the rest. And I'm saying that, look, why wouldn't you prevent this? Because what would you have taken? You are government. You want to increase CST from 6 to 9%. Telcos, this is what I want to do. What's your take on it? How are you going to implement it? And then you start to engage from there on. But if you don't, and you think that the telcos are going to, I mean, the telcos, for me, I think that they are very crucial to the development of this country. Much as they are there to make profit, they are playing a very crucial role.
Some of them are the largest taxpayers to the country.
Exactly.
At the end of the day,
and even in terms of employment, yes. In terms of employment, so I think we should. For me, we should deal with them with some respect that they deserve. And that erroneous impression that telcos are here, they are making money. Yes, telcos are making money, but let's not confuse revenues with profits. And look, if we continue, for me, that's my opinion, if we continue to deal with them as the cash cows, and every time we want to raise money, we go to the telcos, look, we're not going to get anything out of them. People are using telecom services for development and all that, data, big data and all that. And we are here, anytime we bring the issue of the telcos, it's about taxing. How are you going to make more money from them? Once we kill them, I mean, we're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
See, I totally agree with what you guys say. To me, the telcos are the single most important companies in this country. Let's face it. When you look at how they have changed our lives, and you compare that against the amount of money they actually take from our total expenditure, there's a disconnect. Because what they do for us is so much more, is so much bigger than how much we are giving them in terms of the convenience they bring. Imagine a life without mobile phones, without mobile money, without data and that. Yet, however, I think that the telcos we deserve to be treated with utmost good faith by them. Simple question. 6% CST tax. The telcos complain, we are absorbing it, this is how much we love you, and that. You're now increasing from 6% to 9%. Then all of a sudden, they're dumping everything on the customer. Question. The deductions they are taking now, is it based on the additional CST tax, which was added, the 3%, or is it based on the entire CST tax?
The 9%.
It's the 9%. So the question is this: if you were absorbing the 6% before, and it's increased to 9%, what do you now pass on to the consumer if you cannot cope with the extra? You start passing on the 3%. The fact that passing on the 9% shows it just shows a certain level of bad faith by the telcos.
That's certainly the argument of government in this.
I think that you see, let's look at the letter of the law and how this should be done. What you are saying, for me, I think it's moral suasion. We want them to do it.
So from 2008, who persuaded them? Who persuaded them morally from 2008 to charge?
That was
their business
2006. That was their business decision.
It's just profit
that was their
maximization.
business decision to absorb the 6%. And did the law say they should absorb it? No. The law says it's a consumer tax and consumers are supposed to pay on recharge. So I'm saying that if they were absorbing and you think that in your wisdom you want to increase it and you don't consult them, then they can pass it on because it was a business decision. In any case, when they were absorbing it, why didn't you tell them to pass it on to the consumer? And you were looking on because you were getting your money as government. You didn't care how they were deducting it. Do you get it?
At that point, this whole argument had not even come. Let me hear Kwame.
Look, first of all, there are some things we should get straight. The CST is a consumer tax. Do you understand? It's the consumer that's supposed to pay for it. That's a fact. Now, the argument we are making about whether the telcos are being unfair and they are maximizing their profit and stuff like that, it's like you. When a thief comes to steal your pen, you decide to ignore it. That after a year or two, the thief comes back and steals your watch. And then you catch the thief. I am supposed to ignore the fact that you first stole my mobile phone and just deal with the watch. No, there's a history to it. In 2008, you introduced a tax, 6%. You call it CST. I decide to absorb it. I'll take it. I will not charge the consumer who is supposed to originally pay for it. Then you have been insensitive along the process. You refuse to acknowledge that I decided to consume based on my own, even though I was supposed to throw it out to the consumer. You come and add 3% to it. Then I say, okay, fine. You're adding up to it because I refuse to respond in the first place. This time around, I'm taking the retrospective effect. I'm putting everything back to the consumer who's originally supposed to pay for it, and then you bore. That's basically what this is. Why should you be angry? I took the decision to consume the 6%. I was not getting any incentive for it. You didn't do anything about it. I took it on my own. I was still supposed to expand.
The question is why now?
Why now? It's a business decision.
Why not now?
Why not now?
Why now?
Why not now?
That's why.
In the first place, you were insensitive.
The certain section of the political class are reading political meanings into it.
No,
that this is a decision to make government unpopular.
The point is this. The point is this.
Monitoring
I took your 6%.
The streams of revenues of telcos.
My brother,
they now want to
I
hit back
swallowed your 6% in spite of the pain. I took it down. It was okay. Then you're now coming to add chloroquine. You're coming to add all the drugs on it, and you expect me to keep quiet and not tell the people that originally you're supposed to pay for this 6%. I swallowed it because I thought I could. Now they added. So I'm letting you know how much you're supposed to pay originally.
Let me tell you my worry comes from about this thing. You see, in the past, I've always been saying it that the telco industry has been a perfect poster boy for free market competition. in Ghana, the inflation rate in the telecom industry has been 0% for years. The only two significant increases that have come have both been due to fiscal policy. One, when they decided to take out the NHIL levy and this year and make them separate taxes, then this communication tax increase. All right. Now, during all this time, the industry was ruled by free competition. And I was saying that the bank should learn, we should learn a lesson from this. 6 companies competing freely with themselves is helping us in some way, which is what free market economics is all about. Well, look at the banks that time, something banks were operating as an oligopoly to fleece us. My worry is that has now changed. If you watch recently, the telco companies have started operating in a coordinated manner, especially when it comes to dealing with government and the impact on customers. They have a chamber. And my fear is that now that they're operating on this level, everybody has to be very careful about what goes on. Because the chamber can now sit down and gather them together and decide that government has not done anything about fiber cuts. And it's affecting us. That's what scares me.
I pray we don't get there.
That's what scares me.
See, the thing is, when he talked about inflation in the telecom industry being about 0%, it's not that inflation wasn't there were no increases when it comes to even
the competition that was so intense that nobody wanted to lose the market share.
Exactly what I'm saying. That so at a point they were doing everything because they want to serve the consumer better. Prices were increased, but they were maintaining 0% inflation, and that was somebody's business decision. That look, we need to, because competition, at the end of the day, benefits the consumers, and consumers were benefiting. And as government or as a regulator, some of these things we should not lose sight of the fact that these people are playing this crucial role. And if inflation and they were absorbing all these things, there are things that when you want to do, you consult them. They are partners. They are stakeholders. You don't treat them as some strangers. Bring them to the table.
So wrong that somebody is trying to take a business decision of that nature. You want them to reconsider or review the decision.
Or lose their license.
And you are imposing it on them.
You don't treat people like that.
You don't do that.
Even the other directive about the bundles, for me, I think that it's so needless and it's so wrong.
It's roll over bundles.
Hold on, and so
but people are paying taxes on those bundles, and you don't allow them to consume them. You cut them off.
Hold on.
Okay,
let me land on that. I'm saying that because it's a subscription, and the true usage of the internet should be pay as you go. You buy your credit 10 cedis, and you are charged on it. But the telcos have decided that
says who? Based on what?
It's their product they are offering. It's their product they are offering.
And as part of competition, that has evolved, and they are giving customers a better experience.
So are you saying that somebody should pay a tax on the part of the bundle
let the market
determine the price?
So why are you now telling them that, look, okay, sell this and don't sell that? They bought the license, they bought the spectrum.
Because the market is regulated, it's not free to the extent that they can do
whatever
they want.
But we should know the extent to which you can regulate. Okay, it's not a free for all.
But guys. Okay, do this. I quite agree with what Kwame said, that at the end of the day, CST is a consumption tax. Therefore, it should go to the consumer. And it has really opened my eyes to something here. In fact, really, the telcos should not have even absorbed the first one. However, but my issue with the telcos is that the telcos were trying to make it look as if it was like they are still doing Mr. Good. This is a PR thing they've been doing, which is what I'm doing.
The challenge is that now you really feel it. You've paid for 10 cedis.
What I'm coming to now is about when it comes to the upfront deductions. Since based on your argument, it's a consumption tax. The tax should only be based on consumption. Now you take a bundle, because for some reason you only use half of it. You have not consumed half of it. Already the telcos are not allowing you to roll it over. They are taking that money from you, even though you have not used it.
No.
Then the consumption tax you are paying on it again.
That's a good argument to bring it.
We'll take a break here. We'll take a break here. We'll be back with more on press conference. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is press conference right here on CCTV. I'm Duke Mensah Opoku. I still have in studio Richard, Kwame, and Toma. We just wrapped up the discussion on the communication service tax, the tag of upfront deduction between government and the telecommunications companies. We're ending on a very sad note. Floods, torrential rains in the Upper East region, resulting in floods, have claimed more than 20 lives. This has been part of the response of government. A video that will show you up next.
In fact, it's so pathetic, I would say, because we have moved from one community to another, and we are currently at Sirigu, where a woman lost her life as a result of the collapsed building. Looking at the situation, we want to call on all bodies concerned, because the relief that we have may not be enough to reach or cover all these areas, especially victims that are affected. Though we would move ahead as a first step to see how we can support, but we still need the support of government and the support of other NGOs, especially World Vision, Red Cross, and Action Aid, if they can come into support, and also benevolent organizations that think they can support us to give relief to victims of this disaster.
So that was an official of NADMO there in the Upper East region. Let me come to the studio. Begin with you, Kwame. Position.
Duke, on this matter, I think the very weird aspect of it all has been the fight over whether NADMO is being accurate with the figures or not. I know that the minister, in the region has argued over NADMO's figures. The last time I checked was around 27. Mm-hmm. The minister is upset.
29 actually by Friday.
Look at that. In a certain feeling that NADMO is playing politics with it. Can you imagine? NADMO has been on the grounds. They are checking the level of devastation. They are telling you that as of the time, it was 27 people that had died. The minister was upset rather about the death that NADMO is putting out. Instead of being concerned about the way and manner we can get quick relief to the people. Again, when all this devastation was taking place, we were in Accra, thinking of how to wheel, relief items by road to them. When we could quickly mobilize by air and send the support to the people. We're here having a conversation about how to get this. When the people are dying, the people are losing their livelihood. And it was a continuous exercise. We were debating over whether NADMO was correct or the accurate, or we can mitigate the number of deaths when we had actually no control over it. The danger is this. Are we in the know of how we can actually avoid such a scenario tomorrow? We don't. We probably will never get a solution to it. We will only find a way to mitigate and get relief items to them. But as to how comprehensively deal with this matter, I'm not sure we can ever do it. Okay. I am hoping that NADMO will get enough and adequate warehouses around those regions so that when stuff like this do happen, we can quickly extend support to the people.
These are just raised. The Bagre Dam has not even been open. Thomas, 30 seconds.
Well, my worry is about NADMO's capacity to deal with some of these things. You hear the gentleman now asking for relief. It's natural that people should be helped to support the state in such issues. But you see, Ghana is very lucky in terms of the fact we don't have major issues like these hurricanes and co you see on CNN and Al Jazeera. And when these issues come and you have a death toll of 20-something people, and we are still sitting on our hands, you start to worry about what will happen if we had a major earthquake or flood or something where the death toll is like what happened recently in the Bahamas and people were rendered homeless. What on earth would happen? I think we need to look very closely at the funding mechanisms for NADMO. Fine, I know that these things do happen all the time, so there's no point in giving them a regular large funding where the money eventually will end up being chopped because they do it for it. But we should have emergency mechanisms in place that kick in when something like this happens. Okay. That NADMO can go here and get money, go here and get money, and react to sort people out. Okay,
Richard, I will be unfair to you. I would give the time to the viewers instead of letting you have, except you have maybe one sentence.
For me, I think that, like Thomas was saying, the mechanism of funding NADMO should change. And we should also bear in mind that we are not in different seasons and difficult seasons, and where rains can come in any time and anywhere. So we should be making preparation for some of these things.
Your messages now. Mauli from Agbogba says, why doesn't the minister want us to know how much we are being taxed? She should give us a break. Senor from Chakradi says, Ghana's democracy is stinking. We pay too much tax and nothing is done. Our tax is used to feed lazy politicians. This CST shows government empty noise. And last one from Michelle Boyvi from Fishpond says, I'm really enjoying your program. Thanks a lot for the education you're giving us. Sir Kwame, I love your submissions. Keep it up. But I have a question. Government asked the telcos to stop the deductions, but they are still deducting. Can I sue the telcos? Well, on that note of a lawsuit, we draw down the curtain on this week's edition of Press Conference. My name is Mensah Opoku. I had in studio Richard Ni Anekwe Abe, editor, citybusinessnews.com, Kwame Danso, Champong, editor, starfmonline.com.gh, and Toma Emehi, editor of the Gold Street Business. Keep watching CCTV. Enjoy the rest of our programming.